You probably know that Australia has some of the strictest gun laws in the world. But what if I told you its borders might be, well, a lot more porous than you think? Today, we're diving into a critical funding gap that could be letting guns, drugs, and other threats slip right through. And we'll look at a pretty controversial proposal to fix it. All right, so to really wrap our heads around this, we've got to start with this. Well, it's a fundamental contradiction, really, in Australia's security policy. Think about it like this. On one hand, you've got policies getting stricter and stricter for things that are already in the country, like the rules for legal gun owners. But at the same time, you look at the front door, the border, and the inspection rates for stuff coming in are surprisingly low. And that's the central paradox we're going to unpack. Okay, so you might be thinking, is this gap a real thing, or is it just a bit of an exaggeration? Well, let me tell you, this isn't some new claim. For years, and I mean years, official government reports have been sounding the alarm about the huge scale of the challenge at Australia's borders. Let's actually rewind the clock a bit, go all the way back to 2004. An official audit found something that's kind of startling. The target for inspecting sea cargo was set at just 5%. And get this, it wasn't because they didn't have the resources. This was the actual policy. All right, now let's jump forward 2 decades. You'd think that number would have shot up, right? I mean, trade volumes have just exploded since then. But nope, the inspection rate barely budged. It only crept up to about 7%. That basically became the new normal, just the accepted baseline for our border security. So what does a single-digit inspection rate actually look like in the real world? Well, picture this. You've got this gigantic pipeline, and there are millions of containers and packages flowing through it 24/7. But the net you've got to catch the bad stuff, it's only big enough to cover a tiny, tiny fraction of that opening. That's pretty much the operational reality. And we're not talking about small stuff here. The stakes are incredibly high. This whole system is supposed to be our shield against 3 major threats: illicit firearms and all their parts, massive drug shipments, and of course, those critical biosecurity risks that could devastate our farms and our environment. So let's talk numbers for a second, just see what they are catching. In just one reporting year, 2022-23, the Australian Border Force found 840 undeclared firearms, parts, and accessories. And that's not all. In that exact same year, they also stopped over 16,000 kilograms of major illicit drugs from hitting the streets. I mean, we are talking about absolutely massive seizures here. Some single hauls of cocaine and heroin worth hundreds of millions of dollars. But here's the thing you really have to remember. These huge numbers, they're just the success stories. They only represent what was actually caught. It just gives you a terrifying glimpse into the sheer volume of illegal goods that are hammering against a system that's stretched pretty thin. So all of this really leads to the million-dollar question, right? Why? Why does this gap exist? If everyone knows about the problem, why hasn't it been fixed? Well, official reviews all seem to point their finger at one single systemic issue. And here it is. According to the Inspector General of Biosecurity, the real problem is an outdated funding and costing model. It's not about the people on the front line not doing their jobs. It's about the entire financial scaffolding of the system being broken. So what on earth does an outdated funding model even mean? Well, to put it simply, the amount of money and people assigned to check cargo just hasn't kept up with the insane growth in trade. Think about how many more packages and containers are arriving now compared to 20 years ago. The funding hasn't matched that explosion. It's a structural problem that's just baked right into the system. Okay, so if the problem is all about the funding model, what's the fix? Well, the source material we're looking at points to one very specific idea, one that's designed to link the inspection budget directly to the amount of stuff actually coming into the country. It's called the Import Risk and Integrity Levy. The basic idea is to put a small charge on importers for every bit of sea and air cargo they bring in. But, and this is the most important part, the money from that charge would be legally locked away. It's a practice called hypothecation. It means that cash could only be used for one thing: boosting border inspection capability. Nothing else. So how would this actually work? It's pretty straightforward, really. 3 steps. 1, the levy gets applied to incoming freight. 2, that revenue is legally quarantined, locked in a box just for the border agencies. And 3, they use those funds to directly level up their inspection game. We're talking more high-tech scanners, more boots on the ground, and better intelligence work. Now, you should know, this isn't some brand new idea somebody just cooked up. This proposal has been on the table for a while. It's been officially analyzed, costed out, and debated by different groups for several years now. You can actually trace its journey. It really kicked off back in 2019 with an analysis that suggested a levy of about $10 per container. Then, fast forward to 2021, and that's when the Inspector General officially called out the funding model as the root of the problem. A couple of years later, in 2023, the National Farmers Federation weighed in, arguing that the cost should be on the risk creators, the importers, not Aussie producers. And all of that has led to a really concrete option costed by the Parliamentary Budget Office for 2025, a $25 levy per sea container. So what are the people pushing for this actually asking for? Well, their demands are pretty clear. First, pass a law to create the levy and make sure the money is quarantined. Second, publish the inspection rates every quarter so everyone can see them. Third, set some real deterrence targets to get us out of these single-digit inspection rates. And finally, treat guns, drugs, and biosecurity threats as one big connected problem, not separate issues. When you boil it all down, the central argument is incredibly simple. It's about funding our border security right where the risk shows up, with the imports themselves. And that really leaves us with the big final question, doesn't it? Who should actually pay to protect a nation's borders? Is it the general taxpayer? Is it our local producers? Or should it be the importers who are creating this massive flow of goods that needs to be checked in the first place? It's a tough one, and it really gets to the heart of how a country keeps itself safe.